Hello and welcome to this 11Alive News Verify special. I'm Jennifer Bellamy. Misinformation has unfortunately become a fact of life, and sometimes we know it can be difficult to figure out what's real and what's fake online, whether it's a claim from our community leaders or friends or posts that are spreading on social media. That's why 11Alive is dedicated to fact-checking and providing context for you and working to answer your questions. Here's a look back at some of the recent claims we've verified this year from our 11Alive viewers. Every year around your birthday, Georgians have to get ready to renew their car tags. And for many of us, that process includes getting your car's emissions tested. But is that true for everyone? A Verify viewer asked, is it true that not every county in Georgia has a vehicle emissions testing requirement? Let's verify. Our sources tonight are the Georgia Environmental Protection Division and Georgia's Clean Air Force. Here's what we found. According to Georgia's EPD, the state has a vehicle emissions testing program covering gas-powered passenger vehicles registered in 13 counties in the Atlanta metropolitan area. That includes Cherokee, Clayton, Cobb, Coweta, DeKalb, Douglas, Fayette, Forsyth, Fulton, Gwinnett, Henry, Paulding, and Rockdale. That's 13 out of Georgia's 159 total counties. The testing program is required by the Clean Air Act, and it's administered by the agency's Inspection and Maintenance Unit. The EPD says approximately 3 million vehicles are tested every year by certified inspectors at nearly 700 testing stations. Georgia's Clean Air Force says emissions tests are currently required for any 2001 to 2022 model year gas-powered vehicle in those 13 counties. If you move from outside of Georgia into one of those 13 counties with a requirement, you generally need to have your vehicle tested and registered within 30 days. But if you move from a Georgia county with no requirement, a valid emissions isn't required until your next registration renewal date. So we can verify, yes, it is true. Not every county in Georgia is required to participate in the state's vehicle emissions testing program. In fact, 146 Georgia counties do not. Losing a job is a time of uncertainty, no matter who you used to work for. And with several rounds of federal layoffs, many have questions about their next steps. Veronica sent us an email asking us to verify if it's true that recently laid off federal employees are not eligible for unemployment benefits if performance was cited as the reason for their termination. Let's verify. Our source tonight is the Georgia Department of Labor, the state agency that administers unemployment insurance in our state. Here's what we found. According to the state agency's website, if you were fired from your job, you won't be able to draw benefits if your former employer can show that you were terminated for failure to follow rules, orders, or instructions, or for misconduct on the job. But the only way to know for sure if you're eligible for unemployment benefits once fired or let go is to file a claim. The department says it cannot make a predetermination of eligibility before a claim is filed. A spokesperson for the agency says once a claim is filed, eligibility is reviewed and determined on an individual basis. Then a written determination is issued based on available information provided by the person filing the claim and the former employer. So we can verify, no, it's not true that all recently laid off federal employees are not eligible for unemployment benefits if performance was cited as the reason for their termination. The State Department of Labor says each unemployment claim that is filed is reviewed individually, and there is an appeals process for both the former employee and employer after an initial decision is reached. Most of us are familiar with scholarship programs for graduating high school seniors, but what about our more senior adults? Let's verify. Kimberly asks, can Georgia residents 62 years of age and older attend college at no charge for free? Our sources tonight are the University System of Georgia and the Georgia Student Finance Commission. Here's what we found. According to the University System of Georgia, at the system's 26 institutions, Georgia citizens who are 62 years of age and older are eligible for a tuition waiver according to state law, but there are some guidelines. You must be a Georgia resident and 62 or older at the time of registration and present a birth certificate or comparable document for eligibility. You must meet all USG and institution admission requirements, though schools may exercise discretion. All of the usual student and institutional records will be maintained, and you'll have to meet all USG institution and legislated degree requirements. So here's how it works. You can enroll as a regular or auditing student in courses offered for resident credit on a space available basis without payment except for supplies, laboratory, or shop fees. You may not enroll in dental, medical, veterinary, or law schools. And if you're interested, you'll need to contact the college or university for more information. So yes, we can verify Georgia does have a program for qualified residents 62 and older to attend college at no charge. It's that time of year once again, and as Atlanta's airport hits its stride with back-to-back holiday travel seasons, Verify viewer William asks, what's the basis for the claim that HartsfieldJackson is the world's busiest airport? Our source is the Airports Council International, a group that represents the interest of airports around the world with the goal of promoting excellence in the aviation industry by working with governments, experts, and other international organizations. It also publishes the rankings for the world's busiest airport. Here's what we found. The ACI says it ranks airports based on data gathered from more than 2,600 airports across 180 countries and territories worldwide. The group listed the top 3 busiest airports for 2023 as Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, followed by Dubai International Airport for the first time, beating out third place Dallas-Fort Worth International. London Heathrow came in at 4th, and Tokyo Haneda jumped from 16th in 2022 to round out the top 5 for 2023. According to the ACI, Hartsfield-Jackson saw more than 104.6 million passengers in 2023, far above the 86.9 million in Dubai and the 81.7 million at Dallas-Fort Worth. When it comes to aircraft movements or landings and takeoffs, Atlanta is still in first place, followed by Chicago O'Hare and Dallas-Fort Worth in second and third. So we can verify, yes, it's true, Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson is and remains the world's busiest airport, based on the number of passengers and the volume of landings and takeoffs. Shortly after taking office for his second term, President Donald Trump's administration moved to rename a Georgia military installation. Fort Moore, located just outside of Columbus, Georgia, will once again be called Fort Benning after a prior name change under former President Joe Biden. But does that mean Fort Benning reverts back to exactly what it was? Our sources are the U.S. Department of Defense, Georgia's Department of Veterans Service, and the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2021. Here's what we found. For more than 100 years, Fort Benning honored the life of Confederate officer Henry L. Benning, a justice on the Georgia Supreme Court who vocally supported secession after Abraham Lincoln's presidential election. He joined the Confederate Army during the Civil War and rose through the ranks. But in May 2023, as part of an effort to address racial injustice, the base was renamed to honor the late Lieutenant General Hal Moore and his wife Julia, marking the first time the Army named a base in honor of a married couple. Hal served in Vietnam as commander of a cavalry battalion based at Fort Benning and was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Julia successfully lobbied the Pentagon to adopt a policy requiring that military families be notified in person of war casualties rather than by telegram. Now, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has signed a memorandum changing Fort Moore back to Fort Benning, but this time in honor of Corporal Fred G. Benning. He, too, was awarded a Distinguished Service Cross for heroism during World War I. The reason a different Benning is chosen here is because Congress passed a law in 2021 prohibiting bases to be named after anyone who voluntarily served or held leadership positions within the Confederacy. So we can verify, yes, it is called Fort Benning again, but there's important context here. While Secretary Hegseth restored the previous Benning surname, it's in honor of a completely different person. This is a question that affects a lot of viewers. Is your job required to give you a lunch break during your shift? Let's verify. Our sources tonight are the U.S. Department of Labor, the Georgia Department of Labor, and the Fair Labor Standards Act. So here's what we found. Some states do require meal breaks, but according to the Georgia Department of Labor website, neither the Fair Labor Standards Act nor Georgia law requires breaks or meal periods to be given to workers. While many employers will still provide one or both, it's at their discretion. Now, when it comes to breaks, the department says brief ones from 5 to 20 minutes are common. The FLSA does require that employees be compensated for short breaks, but that's not the case for meal periods that are 30 minutes or longer, as long as workers can use that time as they wish and don't have to work. Another exception for breaks impacts nursing mothers. The U.S. Department of Labor says most nursing workers have the right to a reasonable break time and a private space to pump while at work. The right is available for up to 1 year after a child's birth. So we can verify, no, employers in Georgia are not required to provide workers with a lunch or other meal break during their shift. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, anytime you see or hear something you'd like for us to take a look at and fact check, let us know. Just text the word verify to 404-885-7600, or you can email us at verify@11alive.com.